So for $140 or £85, is Kill Team Nightmare a good deal or not? Let's take a closer look at some Night Lords and Mandrakes and talk through the box from a 40k perspective. Hello and welcome back to Warspets Tactics, where today I thought we'd talk Kill Team Nightmare once more, and with the box set going up for pre-order in the next few hours or so, I thought it could be nice to do a deep dive on the kit, talk about all the new models, and how they weigh up for their value versus other 40k sets. Kill Team Nightmare is a very long-awaited Kill Team box at this point. Games Workshop showed off the Night Lords in December, the Mandrakes in January, but it seems they're only now going up for pre-order all the way in April. In the box set you get 10 Drukhari Mandrakes, 10 Chaos Space Marine Legionaries with a rather fun Night Lords upgrade sprue, a medium-sized terrain piece called the Genitorum Hub, and of course plenty of paper in the box set as well, Kill Team data cards, and the Night Lords instruction manual. The price from Games Workshop's confirmed at $140, which would equate to £85 and €110. That would be the way that Games Workshop would normally translate those prices. It's not impossible, it could be a little bit further, but the $140 price should be right. This puts it in at a little bit more expensive than Kill Team Salvation. That was the one with Space Marine Scouts facing off against Eldari Striking Scorpions, despite the Striking Scorpions seeming to be priced individually quite a lot more expensive than plenty of other Kill Teams out there. It very roughly equates to basically having the two kill teams and sort of getting the terrain for free, though we'll talk about that in a bit more detail in just a second. And in any case, it's going up for pre-order on Saturday the 6th of April, with a full launch date on the 20th of April. The individual kit releases for the Night Lords and the Drukhari Mandrakes probably won't be for quite a long time after this, unfortunately, likely to follow around about 2 to 3 months after the big box release. If the overall deal does look interesting enough to you, I generally try and buy it first through a third-party discount retailer as opposed to Games Workshop's web store direct, as you save a fair amount of money on that. It kind of remains to be seen exactly how well Games Workshop has produced this one. It could be that supply is as poor as some of the other Kill Team boxes out there that have sold out almost instantly, but just from a few anecdotes it does sound like there might be a bit more of this one to go around than sometimes in the past. In any case, you can find some links down in the video description to the channel affiliates. Wargame Portal in the USA should be going for a midnight launch at midnight Central Time, and Element Games in the UK usually has them for a 10 AM launch here, both of those places typically giving 15% off. There's also Gap Games in Australia and Fenris Workshop in Canada as well. All of those are linked down in the video description if you'd like to help support Warspets Tactics as well as save a bit of money off this kit. In any case, if you do decide to buy it, I would try and be fairly prompt. As mentioned, they have been known to sell out in the past, but there's no guarantee that this one will. Moving on to the important bit though, let's talk about those models. The Drukhari Mandrakes were revealed at the Las Vegas Open. These guys are basically Drukhari shadow horrors of Comora, inhabiting a dark area known as Aelinrak, a district literally fallen into shadow and phased partially in and out of an alternative dimension. The particularly luckless and twisted Drukhari that befell that fate becoming the Mandrakes. Mandrakes are essentially shade demon things and have jet black warping skin with foul green runes skittering across them, and almost like an equivalent of Drukhari demon, mainly inhabiting their shadow realm, but with the curious and very sinister ability to pull themselves into existence through the shadow of others. Maybe being a bit on the nose there when you have your soldiers literally fighting their own shadows. Bands of them might be known to tag along with raiding parties, feasting on the delicious fear and destruction of their enemies, and setting about enemy infantry formations with balefire blasts and glimmering steel blades. I feel like the miniatures they redid for them are nice enough, keeping with the same sort of theme as the resin kit that they had, but I feel like just the translation from resin to plastic will be a really big upgrade for these guys. The resin kit wasn't particularly good when it was out, and it's been out of production for really quite a long time. Drukhari still have a bunch of other kits though that were resin kits that have been range rotated, and there's no proper way to buy them at the moment, like their grotesques. These guys do get a few interesting options as well that might or might not get 40k rules. Some bigger and meatier melee weapons like the guy with a two-handed sword on the top row. Will be interesting to see if they get any updated 40k datasheets when their codex comes round to represent that gear. In Warhammer 40k, currently for the Drukhari, the Mandrakes are quite a strong squad. A staple and competitive army list, 65 points per 5 of these little horrors. Their main role is to be a utility unit for armies. They get to infiltrate, so it can be a valuable thing to screen the army from your forces getting hit turn 1 by various things. And the models are kind of okay at skirmishing with enemy lighter infantry, 2 shots with devastating wounds with their bale blasts at range, and a bunch of strength 5 volume attacks in close combat. They move really quite quickly, even for Drukhari, though they are really quite glass cannon and easy to kill. They might have stealth and a 5+ invulnerable save, but only being toughness 3 on 1 wound isn't really all that great for 13 points. Perhaps the single best thing about them, though, is the ability to fade away. At the end of the enemy turn, they can return to reserves and then reappear somewhere new, which is great for doing secondary objectives or just hitting enemy infantry where they're really not expecting it. As a result, it's really not uncommon for Drukhari lists to maybe field a couple of units of these guys. I feel like they're rarely a bad choice. Games Workshop did give us a few glimpses at the new sprues as well, which you can see here. I'm not sure for me it's the most helpful thing with getting a better idea of the models versus the actual assembled model pictures. Certainly a whole ton of curved and sickled blades though, plus all manner of sinister limbs conjuring balefire. I guess one thing that you can see is that there's a fair few more swords and blades compared with the amount of models that you have. It does mean there's a bit of choice of assembly compared with certain kill team operatives, even if I would say it's maybe a little bit less obvious than a few other kill teams. They do generally look like guys with steely blades and flames for the most part to me. Here are just a few pictures of the different kill team operatives who have some slightly different war gear. I'm not necessarily sure if any of this is going to translate to different gear for 40k, or whether it's just going to be relevant for the kill team game. The Night Fiend, I believe, is the unit's leader. He's got a slightly interesting clawed hand there. And as mentioned, I feel like the Chooser of Flesh and maybe that Shade Weaver might be the ones that are more likely to have some sort of 40k rules impact. A great big two-handed Glimmer Steel blade might hit a bit harder than the average one perhaps, and I guess the Shade Weaver might have some sort of camouflage ability for the unit. In any case, I think they're pretty fun models, generally quite well received, and definitely a helpful thing to have restored to the roster for the Drukhari. Moving on to the second half of the kill team, and here we have the Night Lords. The Night Lords are perhaps far more a mainstream, well-known thing in Warhammer 40k, the Legion of Conrad Curze, and somewhat true to his image, they're a twisted legion of depraved killers, meting out justice on their own terms, and typically making war to slaughter, inflict terror, and acquire material for their warbands, being sort of chaos but not particularly interested in the chaos deities, and they certainly have their own iconic look, lightning bolts breathing over their armour, and plenty of spooky sinister bat-winged helms with fanged maws. Out of kill team upgrade sprues so far, I'd argue that this is one of the ones that's added the most value to a unit. It's really quite nice to see just how much theme that you can really give a unit just with some head swaps and a few bits of themed gear and adornments. I feel like this is the sort of thing that'd be really cool to see for the other Chaos Legions as well, who've just generally not really had all that much representation in Warhammer 40k model parts, not compared with Heresy era stuff anyway. Going through the bits quickly in just a bit more detail, there's a rather cool guy with a fun plasma pistol, a chainsword that's got the best part of a skeleton attached to it, and a particularly fancy winged helm, and one with a nice spiny missile launcher, one that looks a lot more like perhaps the tactical marine missile launcher for Space Marines. Interesting to see the different take on it here. There's a dual lightning clawed guy that almost looks like a microcosm of Conrad Curze. He's got a fun skull on his right shoulder plate as well. I guess in 40k terms that might mean that the unit might be able to gain some more war gear with the accursed weapons perhaps. That'd be quite fun to see. I just noticed that plenty of those have the sort of flayed flesh loincloth type things, like the one on the right is modelling. Always good to take some memories of your former victims along, I suppose. Perhaps a fairly standout piece is a great big banner that's got the best part of a dead Space Marine on it. Nice to know what's going to happen to your warriors if you don't manage to beat these guys. I do quite like their helms as well. Those extra little fun fangs they have are quite a nice extra feature as well, for giving them more of the theme of the Legion. There's a chap with a heavy melee weapon who seems to have extra flayed flesh. I guess that shows he's probably extra good at it. And otherwise there's quite a fun little operative guy with an envenomed blade and a bolt pistol with a little bayonet and a sort of Night Lord winged emblem. It looks all very sinister as well, with a sort of animal skull mask poking out from under that hood. The models also seem to come with sculpted shoulder pads as well for the Legion symbol. I guess you'd expect that in just about any upgrade sprue. Overall, as mentioned, this one does seem to have gone down pretty well with people. Nice to see a sub-faction of 40k get explored a little bit more, and I feel like the parts here do enough to really change the feel of the Legionary unit. I definitely feel like we've seen some of the upgrade sprues just not be quite as interesting, to the point for a few of them where I wouldn't really have known that they were new parts compared with what you got in the model set anyway. Finally, for miniature contents, there's this terrain piece, a Generatorium hub, which is like a little power plant type thing it seems. I feel like Games Workshop have done a bit better with getting the balance of these Kill Team box sets a bit more focused on the miniatures and not trying to include like half a battlefield of terrain with every set. I know that some people do like that, but I think it's not the worst idea to include most of the terrain separately. This one I'd describe as maybe a medium-sized terrain piece for 40k. It does seem that the sides of the thing do stand a good bit higher compared with some of the models. Feels like it's nice enough scattered terrain to have on a board, though I guess it might take up quite a bit of space. Definitely feels an upgrade though if you're using a bit more improvised or ad hoc terrain. For estimating how much this would cost separately, I'm a little bit uncertain. Games Workshop terrain does tend to be on the expensive side, but looking at the size of the thing compared with certain other Games Workshop terrain pieces, I'd maybe not be too surprised if they chose to charge this at something like £30 or $50 or so. If you did happen to want to pick up one of these separately, if they even choose to release it as such. Putting that all together, you get the Night Lords Mandrakes and the Genitorum, plus the Kill Team paper and rules content. For prices individually, it seems reasonable to estimate the Night Lords Kill Team being the same price as the Legionaries Kill Team. That's also the Legionary kit with an upgrade sprue. That one was £42.50, €55 or $70, so probably going to be a similar price to that when they eventually release. On the other hand though, I would say that the Mandrake's price might well be a little bit less obvious. Kill Team releases really have varied quite a lot depending on what was in the box set. They could be at the same sort of price as the Striking Scorpions, who were other Eldari. They were all the way up at £45 or $75. Though it did kind of feel like you were buying two sets of 5 Aspect Warriors in one box together there, as opposed to really one squad that was designed as a squad of 10, as it maybe appears that the Mandrakes are. On the other hand, for other new miniatures, we've had things like the Beastmen or the Sisters Novitiates being around about £37 or $60, really quite considerably cheaper there. Just for the sake of argument, I've chosen to estimate them as a middle ground like the Orc Commandos at £40 or $65. If going by that sort of logic, and you literally just wanted the actual playable miniatures and weren't bothered about the terrain, that would in theory mean that Kill Team Nightmare wouldn't really offer any actual sort of discount on the miniatures inside. But I guess it would mean that basically you get these two kill teams, you get the terrain piece for essentially like £2.50 or $5. Definitely depends on which bits you value, of course. A cool bit of terrain is definitely handy to have for most home gaming tables and things. Though I feel like if there's any one element of the box set that you're not particularly bothered by, it just feels like it's more an offering at Games Workshop standard prices as opposed to anything particularly exciting. Theoretically, if you use my estimate for the Genitorum thing, then it'd be roughly like a 25% discount on the kits overall. So that is provided that you want literally everything. Overall, with that in mind, I basically say that it's going to look like a good deal if you literally will value it and get some good use out of every bit of it. Or as an alternative to that, you can find someone to maybe split the box with if you want the Night Lords and they want the Mandrakes, plus you wind up with some terrain there. Or I guess if you say you really want one of the kill teams plus the terrain bits, you could maybe try and resell the other one, and likely at least recoup a fair bit of the overall box's value via eBay or something, I suppose. Generally, I'd hope that they have managed to make enough supply of this. It is always a bit annoying when the kits feel like they're kind of in early access type mode if they don't. I certainly remember with the kill team with the Guard Kazakin in it, that was annoying to be able to have them in quite such short supply when the Guard Codex dropped. I did see them going on kind of obscene prices for eBay just because there weren't many of them about. And Games Workshop don't tend to release things individually for a few months later. From general chatter on the internet, I suspect it's going to be at least fairly popular though. I'd say maybe a little bit more so for the Night Lords than the Drukhari, just as Drukhari don't have the biggest ever fan base out there. That's been my instincts, even though I'm sure there's not really all that many people with Night Lords either. In any case though, look forward to hearing your thoughts. Do you feel like this is worth picking up or not? And if you did want to pick it up, would you be more interested in the Night Lords or the Mandrakes? And would you get value out of the terrain? As mentioned, if you were looking to pick it up, I'd certainly recommend doing so at a discount if you can. Various discount retailers are linked down in the video description. It should be going up for pre-order at midnight USA time via Wargame Portal and 10 AM via Element Games in the UK. Massive thank you to any of you guys choosing to buy through the links. It does help to support Auspex Tactics if you were happening to pick up some Warhammer anyway. Look forward to hearing your thoughts down in the comments though, and feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I do tend to post new 40k videos just about every day and try and keep up with Games Workshop's news and releases. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep these coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.